Thank you, Chair, and good morning to the witnesses, and thank you for your attendance. To PSPC representatives, your Deputy Minister, Ariane Reza, was appointed November 2nd of 2023. Prior to that, she was the Assistant Deputy Minister. Beginning in August of 21, she was the senior official responsible for federal procurement. She oversaw 1,400 employees in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. She led the urgent procurement of critical goods and services to ensure the health and safety of Canadians, involving vaccines and surrounding protective equipment. She directed the development and implementation for the simplification of procurement practices. These efforts focused on building an accessible procurement system that drives value for money. Her DNA was all over the issues that we are studying today and have studied literally for the last couple of months. Why isn't she here?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. She had pre-planned leave for this week, and she's not available this week. Otherwise, she was originally scheduled to be here last week, and the meeting was changed, so she was unfortunately unable to.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I look forward to a further invite to Ms. Reza to attend this particular committee to answer some relevant questions surrounding these concerns. Now, on the bait and switch, to you, Mr. Mills. You've identified an understanding of bait and switch as presented by my colleague, Ms. Block. I want to do a little more pushback because prior to Ms. Block bringing to your attention the real entity behind GC Strategies and the business that they are in, you repeatedly used the phrase, well, they've been in several government contracts providing IT services. That is so inaccurate. The directors of GC Strategies themselves, the principals behind it, Christian Firth, made it abundantly clear on numerous occasions they have no expertise in IT. They are simply an external consultant who contracts with the Government of Canada to find IT professionals, which is really an offensive move, particularly when you take a look at the size of the federal public service that Justin Trudeau has increased by 40% since 2015. Last week at the Ethics Committee, we heard from Jennifer Carr, the president of the Professional Institute of the Public Service of Canada, who oversees our professional IT federal public servants, and they are rightly angered. Very angry at the Government of Canada for simply bypassing their skills, their expertise in-house. You're certainly aware of that, are you not, Mr. Mills?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. I'm aware that there is a debate about what is the capability of IT workers in the government. Again, in the use of external resources, many dialogues we've had with various departments have indicated that there are lots of times when there are very specific skill sets that just aren't available within the public service.
GC Strategies has no skills. There is nothing preventing from the Government of Canada with this massive federal public servants to actually do Google searches on their own to find IT professionals. Why is it a two-person company working out of their basement is allowed to collect $20 million over the course of 3 years for doing absolutely nothing? If we were talking to professionals from the private sector right now, people would be fired for this. There would be accountability for this gross breach of the public trust. And I'm going to ask this question because I bet no one at the PSPC has been suspended with or without pay. Is that correct?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. I'll start with the first part about the use of external consultants is also used in the private sector. And I would note, I will acknowledge that GC Strategies, the two principals of the company, their business model is to make available IT professionals.
Move on. Now, on the issue of bait and switch, we've identified criminality, we've identified fraud, forgery, obstruction of justice, breach of trust by government officials. all surrounding the use of GC strategies and the contracting practices, have you reported anything to the RCMP at this point? And why not if you haven't?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. I'll turn to my Assistant Deputy Minister of the Oversight Branch.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. We're taking all the reports that we're getting very seriously. So we had access to the CBSA reports, the Auditor General report.
RCMP, yes
Thank
or
you.
no?
We'll have to come back to this.
Can she answer that question, Chair?
I'm afraid that the time is well up, but there'll be many more rounds here. Questions to
On to Mr. Barrett. 5 minutes, please.
In a report, the Auditor General said, quote, our review of task authorizations that were issued by the Canada Border Service Agency and co-signed by Public Service and Procurement Canada, we found 2 resources being charged at the rate that required a minimum of 10 years of experience, even though the resources did not have this level of experience, end quote. In a word, what would you, or a phrase, how would you characterize that, Mr. Mills? Is that an example of bait and switch, or is that fraud? What is that?
Thank you for the question. Mr. Chair, certainly it is a requirement of those that are administering those contracts to ensure that the people being put forward meet the minimum requirements. So in that case, they should have verified that if the requirement was 10 years, that the individual had it.
So it's fraud. They lied about the worker's experience to charge a higher rate, right?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not in a position to opine whether it's fraud.
But are you in a position to say whether or not it was honest? My question is it a lie? Because the Auditor General wasn't opining. She analyzed the information and determined that what was said, what was signed off on, was not true. A minimum of 10 years experience that did not exist. So is that honest or dishonest?
Again, thank you, Mr. Chair, but I would not be able to opine whether honesty or dishonesty or administrative error.
Okay. Well, that might be part of the problem. If we have a basic misunderstanding of what is honest and what is dishonest, I think that maybe we should take a separate look at that. 76% of the time, the procurement ombuds found that named resources did not do the work that was stated at the skill level that was required. You said that the skill level of replacement workers had to match that of the workers who were originally authorized to do the work. Has an audit or review been done to ensure that that is the case, having just noted that there was fraud committed as outlined by the Auditor General in the case I mentioned?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do believe the procurement ombudsman said 76% of names that were proposed at the bidding stage did not subsequently do work or have work billed against it. This is something that we are very focused with in terms of when people are being proposed, so that we ensure that those being proposed are most likely to do the work and verify that they do the work.
When they bait the hook with the skill set that they say that they're offering, and then they switch it out and they make sure that they get the maximum price possible and the Canadians get the least value possible. This is something that we would expect that your department is safeguarding against. Ms. Hogan, is it common practice across government contracting that high-priced consultants do carry out a bait and switch, as has been identified in the procurement ombudsman's work, where they present experienced workers to get the contract and charge a higher rate when they actually swap them out for less experienced workers that can pay less, and then they pocket the difference?
Well, I can't comment on whether it's common practice. I can tell you that we saw it in some of the samples that we looked at where an individual, the contract called for 10 years of experience or more, and that's the individual who performed the work was not that way. But there is a mechanism in place in the public service when an individual who's put forward under a contract or task authorization needs to be switched, and that should have happened, and we did not see that happening.
Thank you very much. My time to Mr. Brock, please.